What's up guys, my name is Liam, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the brand new VAXEE ZYGEN NP-01S Ergo. In a market that's full of clones, this is something that's completely unique to anything else that I've ever tried before, where it does have a rear hump for an Ergo mouse. And in this video I'm going to be doing my best to break down this shape for you guys as in much detail as possible. I'll be comparing it to some of their previous mice, and hopefully by the end of this video I'll be able to help you decide whether or not this could possibly be the perfect gaming mouse for you. So let's check it out. And before we get started today, I did want to let you know this was sent out to me. However, everything you'll be hearing in this video is going to be my own words and my own opinions. So starting out, I'm going to go ahead and bring in the NP-01S V2 just to give you guys some kind of comparisons on some of the things that they did change. And we'll go into more details in the shape here in just a little bit, but here's what they look like sitting next to each other. The NP-01S V2 over here, the NP-01S Ergo right over here. So starting out over on the bottom, a couple of different changes that they did make here. The bottom layout that they do have here on this newer mouse is similar to the previous XE V2 that I recently reviewed on my channel. You do have the power button over here in the top left hand side, excuse me. I do really like this power button instead of this one where you had to hold it down. And then you do have your function button down here. If you're to press it, it will change the DPI. If you hold it down, it'll cycle over to the hertz for the polling rate, and same thing with the MS, that stands for the click to bounce setting. So on these newer versions, you can still make all the adjustments you need to make through the mouse on the actual physical copy, the hardware of the mouse itself. This will also have access to the web-based driver if you prefer making the adjustments to your mouse that way. But a couple of the other changes that they did make, they did give this a little bit more of a full skate design for greater stability. Not that much of a noticeable difference, but I do actually like this design a little bit more. They also did make these skates thicker. If you're somebody who did get aftermarket skates before, the skates were thinner and the aftermarket skates would usually be thicker, so it would kind of throw off the sensor a little bit. But now they've lowered the sensor on this newer model and changed it, so if you were to throw aftermarket skates on here, it should be performing perfectly now. And then the final change that they did make on the bottom of this mouse with the NP-01S V2, they did move the sensor. They had it centered in the bottom of the base, but they did slightly move this one up a little bit more, and they did shift it back over so it is now centered with the scroll wheel as their previous mice were. But the last thing I did want to say is coming back over here to the skates, they're using their new speed skates now, and I really love these skates a lot. I feel like they're fantastic, so big upgrade with these newer skates they're including on their mice. But when it does come to the rest of the feeling of this mouse, you're just going to get your typical VAXEE feeling. If you have any of their recent mice, the XEV2, again the NP-01S V2, you're going to have a really solid understanding of just the overall quality on how this mouse feels. Has the same type of coating, and truly the shell on this does feel bulletproof. If I'm going to squeeze really hard here in the center, I get no flex like at all. For mouse 1 and 2, this is using the Huano blue shell pink dots, which I've talked about several times on my channel. Some of my favorite mechanical switches that are out there on the market. And again, you're going to get that just typical, you get just a very minimal amount of movement here for the not a whole lot of post travel. You do get a nice solid stop down here. Again, they've definitely figured out how to fine tune these switches on their mice to try and get them as lightweight as possible so that they're easy to spam, yet they still remain consistent. So no matter where you click this from, you're going to get a pretty even experience. It doesn't even feel a whole lot heavier when you're clicking back here from the rear. On these mice, you get just very minimal amounts of movement left to right on the buttons, nothing that you notice at all in your gameplay. There's no type of switch grinding or anything like that. So the clicks on this really do feel great. One last thing I do want to point out here while we're on the topic, a little cool change that I did notice is these buttons on the NP-01S V2, they're like sharper on the end, and they actually did curve them down, so you don't get that sharp feeling if you're to play up here in the front of the mouse anymore. But then you're going to get the same scroll experience where you do have the pretty heavily defined steps there with a pretty good tensioning on the scroll wheel. The center scroll wheel, the click on it is nice and lightweight. I don't feel like it's too light to where I get any accidental actuations with it, but still nice and easy to spam if you need to do so. Spacing over here on the side buttons does feel great. You get very minimal play back here in the rear when you're actuating the side buttons, but they do go just right into a click. And then once you do click the button in, very minimal post travel, just a minor amount of wobbling there back and forth, but nothing that you really notice, or at least that I've noticed as I've been using it. So yeah, everything about the build on my unit anyways, it does feel spot on. So let's go ahead and we will drop the click quality sound test. So out of the box with the bigger skates on here, everything about the balance for me has felt spot on, and dropping it on my scale here, looks like we got it coming in at approximately 59.1 grams. All right, so now let's talk about the shape. I will be comparing it to the E1, the NP-01, but since this is most similar to the NP-01S V2, we'll go ahead and start out over here. So I've been using this mouse a lot, as much as I possibly can. I played a lot of the Battlefield beta on it. Been also playing a lot of Apex Legends with both of these mice, going back and forth and comparing them. And I will genuinely say that my experience with this mouse, it does feel to me more natural and just more comfortable as you're gripping it. For those of you that have used the NP-01S in the past, or even those of you that love it, I kind of feel like this mouse, there's some type of a uniqueness to it, to where it almost gives you like almost a weird feeling in your hands when you first start using it. Over here on the left hand side, this is raised up more, where the NP-01S was flatter. This one does have a little bit more of that ergo angle. Now, it is not an aggressive angle by any chances, and in fact, I would say that just about all the angles on this mouse compared to the other ergo mice out there is actually really soft. It does feel a little bit wider as you're gripping the NP-01S Ergo compared to the original NP-01S. Not by a whole lot, but you definitely do notice it there. Coming over to the rear of these mice, again, the NP-01S did have that flatter feeling on the top. As you can see, there is a light curve going from left to right on the NP-01S Ergo. So definitely the biggest difference for these mice for me. All around, the Ergo mouse does feel like a bit of a bigger mouse. And this mouse just kind of locks in your hand a bit more, where I felt like with the NP-01S, I can kind of move up on it or move around on it a little bit more as I was using it. With this one, however, just when you're gripping it, and I'll show you what I'm talking about, with the NP-01S, if you do some type of claw grip or try and palm it if you have smaller hands, you almost kind of had this gap, or at least I did up here, because the top of it was so flat. And again, like I was saying, with this mouse, it just feels a bit more natural in your hands. You don't notice as much of like any empty space in your hand as you are holding it. And for my hand size, I can actually even palm this mouse. Whereas with this one, again, I kind of just did some type of aggressive claw with it, is what felt more natural to me on it. I actually do know some people that did fingertip grip the original NP-01S. And if you were to move back, or at least with my hand size, move back here, you could still fingertip the Ergo style if you did choose to do so. But I do kind of feel like that the original NP-01S is going to be a better option if you do just purely fingertip grip while using this mouse. And then the last thing I'll show you just here really quick before we jump in the comparisons, this is just what the right hand profile looks like. Not a whole lot of noticeable difference over here on the right side. Just figured I'd show you guys in case you had any questions about it. All right, next up, we'll look at it next to the E1, and VAXEE actually did tell me about this mouse before they sent it out to me. And just when I heard about NP-01S Ergo, just my initial reaction, since every other Ergo mouse out there does have a mid-hump, I did think that this was going to have more of a mid-hump style. So I was pretty surprised once I actually did receive it to see how it is. But showing it next to the E1 does feel like a bit of a larger mouse. Even putting these together, I wouldn't say that the grip width is that far apart from one another, but it does feel like it is a little bit more wide, and I just almost feel like the curves do feel a little bit more aggressive over here on the E1. But here is the profile from the bottom. Again, this does have that mid hump with a much more aggressive curve signature from the top left hand side down to the right. And here is what they look like next to one another, where the E1 is definitely going to be much more tall with that mid hump. All right, and lastly, I will compare it next to the NP-01 to give you guys with larger hands a better idea on what you're looking at here. Again, all around, this does feel very similar to the NP-01S to me, where the NP-01, I would say, feels a little bit further away from it, but not a whole lot of difference. It does feel noticeably a little bit more wide in the hands as you're holding it, and not really so much to go into the shapes. I've already broke down the shape difference, but I'm just showing you the scale of how these look next to each other with the height. Alright guys, so that wraps things up on the VAXEE ZYGEN NP-01S Ergo, and like I've said many times, truly a really comfortable shape. I really like what VAXEE's doing here, definitely thinking outside the box and giving us something a little bit more unique. Again, the thought of this mouse, it even took me by surprise when I got the final version, so definitely a lot of passion coming out of VAXEE, and if you guys haven't already done so, you can go check out their Twitter. They've done a full breakdown explanation on the thought process that went behind making this mouse, and it really is just so obvious to me how much work, how much thought process, and how much effort that they have been putting in developing their products in recent times. So this is absolutely a banger as far as the shape and the quality goes, in my opinion. If you are somebody who does like ergo mice, you also like rear hump style mice, definitely one to go out there and check out. Again, even if you did try out the NP-01S and it didn't like it, I do feel like the changes that they did make on this might be able to bring you over and sway you. Also, if you do like the NP-01S, I would still recommend checking this one out. But all around, really solid stuff from VAXEE. Great as always to see them innovating. And if this mouse does look like it would be anything of interest to you, then I can absolutely recommend going and checking it out. So if you guys do have any additional questions or feel like I left anything out, please let me know in the comments down below. If you have enjoyed watching this video and are interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please drop this video a like and subscribe to my channel. And thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.